WBCK, want to welcome Bill Phillips to the studio today, President, Chief Executive of Neighborhoods Incorporated in Battle Creek. Hi, Bill.
Morning, Richard.
How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Thanks for coming today. Tell us about Neighborhoods Incorporated. I was just, I'm still exploring to some extent, and I see things that intrigue me about Battle Creek, and Neighborhoods Incorporated was one of them. What do you do?
Well, gosh, Richard, thanks for the opportunity. We are what is known as a community development corporation. That's a body of entities, mostly nonprofits like ourselves, around the country that work to improve the communities in which they live and operate. We at Neighborhoods Incorporated have four program lines of business that we pursue. One is education and counseling. This would involve helping folks develop better skills, financial fitness. We provide a lot of education and support around home ownership. We support home buyers with education programs and a number of different things. Another program line is financial services. We are a Michigan State licensed lender, so we do have a lending program. We also service loans for other investors that own home mortgages in and around Battle Creek. Our third program line of business is community engagement. This has also in the past been called community building. This is where we get involved in a number of programs to support activities in and around Battle Creek. We support the neighborhood planning councils, which is an important structure of city government that is resident driven. And then our fourth line of business is real estate asset management and development. We do rehabs on homes, resell those. And so when you add up all of these programs, including our latest, by the way, that I just remembered, is small business lending that we've added this year.
Wow.
So we have a very full array of programs that enable us to provide a lot of different services, and we focus on the individuals, making families stronger and more economically viable.
This is an incredible array of things.
It is, and for a small organization, it's actually a very complex organization in terms of how all of these different pieces fit together.
Mm-hmm. So, what was the original concept for Neighborhoods Incorporated? I mean, I presume, as is the case with a lot of organizations like yours, they start out with a purpose, and then you discover that you can add to that pretty easily.
Absolutely. Back in 1981, when the organization was formed, it began as a very small group of local residents in a neighborhood that wanted to begin to have some impact. So the phrase of art that we use most of the time is that we do our work block by block. Back in the day, the work was going and taking a block of a neighborhood and going house to house and recruiting the neighbors to help improve the look of their homes. It may have started with improving their yards or improving their home structures themselves. We did programs like paint blitzes, where we try to get everyone to coordinate new paint schemes to, here again, increase the curb appeal and the property value of their homes.
Mm-hmm.
Through the years, that program took root and grew, and in 1991, we became part of a national network of other community development organizations called NeighborWorks America. So as a part of the NeighborWorks America network of about 250 affiliate offices around the country, it began to give us access to other sources of capital to expand our menu of services.
Sounds like that worked out.
It did. It did. It's been a very gratifying experience to be associated not only with the Battle Creek community, but this organization. We have a stellar group of staff members that are highly trained and highly experienced in delivering our services in the community.
We're talking with Bill Phillips, President, Chief Executive at Neighborhoods Incorporated. We're back in a minute to learn more. WBCK. We're here with Bill Phillips, President, Chief Executive of Neighborhoods Incorporated. So Bill, named a number of things out of that, but of course I'm still sticking with a couple of things that have to do directly with neighborhoods. Of course, like the housing that you talked about, helping folks get housing. These are huge obstacles for some folks.
Well, they really are, especially these days. We've just come off of a really large sea change in our economy over the last 7 or so years, and it's impacted a lot of folks. It started out in 2008 with a huge increase in foreclosures and the loss of a lot of great families to our, particularly our older neighborhoods, but the entire community. So now our focus, as that dynamic has begun to settle down considerably, we refocus our efforts toward building back home ownership in these neighborhoods that have lost it. So it's the business has changed a little bit as a result of all these impacts on us, but it's still one of the best ways that a family can build wealth for the future.
Sure, right, and you're right about that. The lending purview has changed, hasn't it, after this stretch of time with the real estate crash?
Well, we learned a lot of lessons, Richard. 20 years ago, everything we did was buy, put people in homes,
Sure.
and that was the number one marching order for all of us. What we've learned and learned at a very gut level over the last several years is that perhaps home ownership actually is not appropriate for everybody, that our world has changed considerably. We're much more mobile. We have to remain more mobile today than perhaps ever before. Therefore, there are some folks that need to keep that flexibility. However, there's still a lot of folks that want to sink those roots down, and appropriately so. Our neighborhoods need that commitment. They need more folks that develop that pride of ownership. And when I say pride of ownership, I extend that to folks that rent as well. It's pride of ownership in your neighborhood, pride of ownership in your community. So we've, I think, become much more realistic about what our expectations ought to look like.
That's interesting that you said that some people might not be cut out to be homeowners. Do you meet people after you've learned more about them, you discover that they might fall into that category, and how do you handle it?
Well, we try to be very honest. People come to us for our advice, and our advice is only as good as our honesty and our directness. So as we counsel with folks on a one-on-one basis, we realize somewhere along that process that perhaps they need to really seriously consider not buying. Most times it works out that it makes sense for them to buy, but there are cases where it doesn't, and that usually becomes pretty obvious once you kind of work through the process with folks.
By the same token, lending has changed, hasn't it? And so you may meet someone who's a great candidate for a home ownership, but they have some needs in getting finance that maybe you can help with, maybe you can't. But I imagine that's become a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. If you thought we were regulated 8 or 10 years ago, the world has gotten even more complex in terms of the regulations and the requirements. So we are always very cognizant of that. The industry has adopted a position that it wants to, if there has to be an error, then it has to be in the favor of the borrower. So that's a little bit of a paradigm shift over perhaps what it used to be, where we were always firstly more conscious of protecting our investors, and we have to do both. So it's changed and gotten even more difficult.
Bill Phillips is here, President, Chief Executive of Neighborhoods Incorporated, and we'll talk more about what they do in just a moment on WBCK 823 WBCK. Bill Phillips is here, President of Neighborhoods Incorporated. We've been talking to some extent about folks in the community who might wish to avail themselves of homes through your assistance. What about homes to which you referred that might need rehabbing? How do you identify those and then become connected with the projects to restore them?
Well, the homes that we acquire it's pretty easy to identify those issues. One of the things that you have to be very much aware of are the city codes and the requirements
Mm.
for the maintenance of the home. So the first thing we do when we look at a property is do a physical assessment of it, and we bring in our general contractors and our staff project managers, and we go through the house top to bottom and identify the things that we know are going to have to be fixed or modified to pair up to the current code requirements. And then it's just a question of what do you want to do beyond that. If it's a home that we're going to resell, then we want to be sensitive to what we believe the current trends are in the marketplace,
Sure, sure.
and the things that people would want to see in a home purchase. So we then look to add those things. So it's just a process of elimination, and we work through that, and generally it turns out pretty well. We have several homes on the market right now, and so we're hopeful that we're going to place some fresh new home buyers in those neighborhoods.
If you watch any of those flip house shows on TV, you know those flip artists are concerned with holding costs and hanging on to houses too long once the work is done. How do you manage that?
As a nonprofit, we have a little more flexibility than those guys.
Mm-hmm.
We're able to avoid some of the holding cost. Quite often, the funds that we have available have been provided through grants for capital programs, either on the local, state, or national level. And what that does for us is it gives us that ability to be patient. And so we try to do what is right for the property, right for the neighborhood, and create a product that will be interesting and attractive to a new family.
Mm-hmm. So is it fair to say that most of the time you can come away with a profit that you can turn into a project on another property?
Yeah, I would say though the last 8 or 10 years for us, we've not seen a lot of profit. Most of that um, we're not in it for profits.
Sure.
We'd like to have a margin because then we're able to take those funds and redeploy them on other things. But we found that we tend to build a lot more into the houses that we rehab. And so our margins, quite honestly, don't tell anybody, but our margins have been pretty thin at the end of the day. So it's all about passing along that value to others, to our buyers, and that value translates to supported property values in the neighborhood as well.
So you talked about that national affiliation. Is it fair to say then that Neighborhoods Incorporated's main funding source comes from those grants and those avenues, or do you accept private donations too?
Well, we do accept private donations. We are supported largely by local foundations and organizations. We also do receive support nationally. Our support is kind of broken into two broad categories. We have program support, which is what helps us keep our staff and keep our doors open. We also have capital funds that we seek across the country. For example, in our lending program, we are the area's only CDFI, that is a designation for a program that is a part of the United States Treasury Department. It's
Wow.
a community development financial institution. So we're able to, on occasion, access capital that from the Treasury Department that we then create loan mortgage programs for folks in the neighborhoods. And that's been a very good program for us in the past. It's a highly competitive national program, so we don't always get it. We, through NeighborWorks America, have a whole menu of different grants for capital improvements for real estate lending, and also to support our community engagement activities as well.
So if someone's listening to this and they want to be a homeowner and they want to put themselves on your radar, how do they do that?
Give us a call. Our number is 269-968-1113. Talk to the ladies at the front desk, and they'll direct you to the right staff person. It's a great resource for anybody, especially first-time home buyers or people that may have some difficulties in their current mortgage. We are advocates for folks that may have some challenges with their current lenders and their current housing situation. So if you have any question to do with your real estate, please give us a call. Chances are there's one program or another that will be able to provide some support for you.
All right. Well, let's repeat that number again so folks can hear it.
269-968-1113.
Okay. Bill Phillips, President, Neighborhoods Incorporated. Very enlightening. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thanks, Richard. Appreciate you having me.
820.